and welcome back to my channel. I'm Tony, and if you are following me, you know that we are deep into the build of this amazing kit from Armortek, and I'll say that twice because it is amazing. It's such a wonderful thing to build. This is the SD.KFZ7. That's only taken me about 20 weeks to really sort of pronounce that with some level of confidence. This is the German half-track from the Second World War period, and it's an absolutely stunning kit to build. This is my very first commission build, as you know, and I'm building this for Peter Windmill, and Peter's going to be popping over in a few days' time, hopefully, to see the progress himself up close. So in the last video, I was kind of at a crossroads of what step to take next. I've now made a decision, so let's talk electronics. Electronics are very important at this stage because once the bodywork goes on, it's going to be difficult to sort of position all the electronics and if there is a problem, to get to them. So I've decided that in a couple of days' time, I'm going to tackle that. My mate Adrian's going to come over and we're going to spend a bit of time together. I love Adrian being here. We have a lot of fun. We just talk tanks and vehicles like this, and we'll be videoing that, but again, that'll be on the members area because there'll be some content in there that maybe not be appropriate for my normal channel, but we're going to get this up and running and singing and dancing for Peter way ahead of me continuing on with the bodywork. So in connection with that, I have decided that I will do the mudguards in today's session. When I say do, I'm going to prep them in today's session, and I hope that I can get them built together with the floor plate that goes across here. But I've got to do a bit of prepping. I've got to sand the tops down and the sides down because I want the paint finish on here to be amazing, and it really does need a bit of work. I've got a circular sander, a little circular sander, which will do a great job of that. And of course, I want to talk to you about a little bit of detailing I want to do with these mudguards, but I'll talk to you about that when the time comes. But ahead of that, and hopefully at the same time, or woven in between doing the mudguards and this, is the dashboard. There's a huge amount of work on the dashboard, not with what Armortek sends you. It's actually very simple, but it's what I want to do. The detailing, and this is one of the parts of this build I absolutely love, because like a lot of the Armortek builds, every single model that's built that Armortek have released, I guarantee you, have got their own personalized stamp from the builder, because this is why this hobby is so amazing. Yes, you can build it out of the box, but then you can adapt it and detail it the way you would like it, the way you paint it, the way you add details, etc. And the dashboard is a really important part because this is on show. There's no roof on this, and of this scale, there's a lot of detail that will be possible to see on the dashboard. Now, I have seen examples of kits like this and other kits that have been built to so much detail, they are like movie grade, and they are incredible. We're not going to do that. We're going to bring it up to another level, and I'm going to try and use cheap components that I've been able to acquire, and also going through my boxes and boxes of bits and bobs, find bits that I can use and utilize without spending any money. And there is another video about how far I've got with some of the switches and building some of the detail to go on the dashboard, and that's on my members area. And the only reason I'm doing that is because it's quite a lengthy process, and if I just concentrated on this, there'll probably be about 3 videos about it, and it will just drag the build out far too long, I think. So we'll cover off some of that in today's video, but there's a lot more work I want to do with you on camera and show you my thought process about how I've attacked this and how I want to see this. And so once this is built up a little bit with some detail on it, I'll get this painted, and when it's being painted and we're waiting for it to dry, I'll do some prep work on the mudguards, and then we'll just carry on and see how far we get today. So that's it. I'm just gonna say another thank you to all of my amazing subscribers. You all know who you are. The subscription levels are growing on a weekly basis, and that really blows me away and really does humble me. And a special thank you to my members. You all know who you are. The extra level of support is incredible, and I have put more videos on there. So if you are tempted, I would really appreciate that, because there's quite a lot of content now in the members area, including the embarrassing bloopers for me. So that's something you may want to consider doing as well. So anyway, enough of me gibbering on as I normally do. I'm now going to reposition the camera. We'll get stuck in and start talking about the dashboard. Okay, so we're going to talk about the dashboard to start with. So what you get with the kit is to start with, you get this huge, big, heavy, beautifully machined piece of aluminium from Armortek, and it's got everything you're going to need, all the holes that you're going to need to fix the windscreen on, and it has an instrument panel which fits in more or less. It's a bit tight, but it fits in in that location there. And you can see I've masked off the holes, and I'll talk about that in a moment. You get this little tachograph thing that goes in here, and you get this little sort of gear lever system thing that comes in here, and I've done a little bit of work on this, and I'll talk about that in more detail in a moment. You get a grab rail that goes on here, and you get some other parts that get bolted onto here, and there's the steering rack that goes onto here, but we'll talk all about that in a moment. So you get all of that, but what you don't get with Armortek's kit is all of this detailing here. Now these are photographs that Peter supplied me, but I have actually seen these, and I've been online and done a lot of work and a lot of research, and you can see you've got sort of spaces for the dials. And remember we talked about those decals from Pegenhorst that I had resized and recalibrated to the scale to fit this. We talked about it in a few videos previously, so that's fine. But I've got all these details here, these little switches and dials and everything else, and I've gone ahead and made all of these. And as I said, that's actually on a separate video on the members area, just because it just takes so much time. But I'll talk you through that when the time comes to install them onto the dash. And then we've got all these screw fixings and rivets and all the rest of it. So I've got some really lovely modelling brass screws here. These are actually watchmaking screws. And all I'm going to do there is I'm just going to drill some holes in this instrument panel and then glue those in to make it look right. And then other details that we need to think about is the relationship, I'll just cock that up, the relationship between this piece here and the bonnet that sits on the top like this. Now I haven't unpacked that bonnet, but I can see from the wrapping that it appears to be one big piece, and from the instructions it looks like it just gets fixed into position, and that's where you're going to access your batteries and possibly some of the running gear as well. So that goes here. But when you look at the details, and I've got lots of photographs, I'm just using this as an example, you will find that this has got, I don't know if it's clear on this picture here, but there's almost a fold in the metal that runs up the side here. I don't know if you can see that. There's a little fold or a crease in the metal that runs up the vertical side, and then it runs across the top of this. And then there's a whole series of rivets that are applied to this as well. So I just want to make sure that I get, not exactly, but I want to have a suggestion if that's what's going on. And also this thing here, which is like a, this is like a leather or rubber gasket or strap that goes up the side along the edge of this piece here, and if you like, covers the seal between the engine and this. So I've got an idea for this. I've got an idea to replicate the fold in the metal, and the rivets, if you remember when we did the little convoy light, I don't know when it was, a couple of weeks ago, I used these plastic half round dome things for decorating fingernails. I'm going to use a series of these, and I've got a little jig that I've got ready to go to set that up and so set them out. And that's that. And once we've done all of that and we've got it all glued on and I'm happy the way it looks, I'll then go and get it ready for painting. However, I don't know if the camera's going to pick this up. Let me see if I can show you. So I've done one side already, this side. I don't know if the camera's picking it up, but there's almost like a series of lines on this side. See if I can get the light to hit that. And that's obviously from the CNC process. Very, very microscopic almost lines, but I feel when I rub my nail across that, I can feel the little ridges, and I actually think that that's going to show up on the paintwork, and I don't want that because the bonnet is going to be beautiful and smooth. So I've used my little bench sander, sorry, my circular sander, with a very fine grit sandpaper. There you go, that's probably a good way to show you the difference between the two, to get this finish. So this is a lovely smooth soft finish. And that is probably, there we go, a lovely smooth soft finish. So I want to get this done first. So away from camera, I'm going to take my little circular sander, get that ready, and then once I've got that done, we're going to start talking about, the very first thing I'm going to do is put this fold on. And I've got some amazing material. Now I did get this, I had to purchase this, but this is like a plastic or composite plastic half round or semicircular bead, and it comes in a bag of various different sizes, and this I think is the perfect scale. But it does have some bending properties, but I'm going to have to put my warm air gun on that just to encourage that to bend round. Once I've got that set out and bent and glued into position, then I'm going to set the rivets out. Once I've got the rivets on and they're all set, we'll get on and start painting. But in between waiting for glue to dry and paint to dry, we'll start talking about the mudguards. I really hope that's made some sort of sense. And then I'll also talk about what I found to replicate this detail here, which is this faux leather. I've just cut a small piece off, and the idea is that that will go on there and fold round, and I just think that adds a little bit of detail, but we will go into more detail on that. So first things first, I'm going to take this off to my bench, my other bench, get my circular sander on that and get that as smooth as this side, ready to start looking at these parts. Right, so that's the dashboard all rubbed down and cleaned up, all residue removed, and I've just set up a bit of a sort of a jig, if you like, to align this half round plastic piece here, and I've picked out one that is approximately just on the, it's just 2 millimeters wide, so it's perfect, I think, in scale proportions. I've got a straight edge clamped, which is now flush to the underside of the dashboard, and I've just taped that and clamped it, and I'm happy with that. I'm just double checking everything's aligned. I'm going to use that as a way of aligning this, and the first thing I'm going to do is just get the straight edge glued into position, and then I'm going to let that glue go off, and then once it's gone off, I can apply a little bit of warm air and be able to bend that round. And what I'm going to do is because these pieces are just not long enough to go the full extent, so I'm going to go for what I would consider a natural joint, which would be in the center of the bonnet, which is about there. I think that'll be fine, and when I pass the other one in, it should match up perfectly the way I've cut them. So now I'm going to apply some glue, but I'm going to put it onto this little wooden block, and then I'm just going to spread that around a bit. So I'm trying to think of an easy way of getting the glue onto this. All I'm going to do with this is I'm just going to hold one end in my hand, and I'm just going to run that along the glue on top of the block. Just try and get the glue on the flat surface of that. So I don't want to go mad with the glue and have glue, you know, bubbling out. I'm just going to slide that into the position I'm looking to put it, which is about there. Press that into position, and that should go off nicely. Now I'm going to just take the other one and just offer that up to see if that marries in. I'm just going to pass it underneath that clamp. I can see that's going to give me a really nice joint. So we can do the same thing on here. That glue's still not gone off on my little block. It's the only way I could think of doing this, because the danger is, if you're not careful, you end up getting glue everywhere. Look at that, that's gone in there, beautiful. Now, once that glue goes off, I'll be confident that that is a perfectly straight line. And then we can put a bit of warm air on here and bend them either side. Okay, that's now complete. What I did was I used my warm air gun just to carefully and gently slowly bend that around, and then I just used a bit of masking tape just to keep that in its position. So that's all gone off now, and I'm really happy with that. And then I just trimmed them using like a close cut pair of cutters. So that's that. I'm really happy with that. Now, before I talk about little rivets here, another detail which I really would like to replicate on here are a couple of little flaps that would go on here. And again, you don't get that with the kit. Now these flaps, I don't know, there's a lot of conversation about them. Some say that they were used to, if they opened them up, it would help cool the engine when the take some hot air out of the engine bay. Some say that you would open them up so that the crew could actually get access to help start and you know, manipulate things and top up fluids and things like that without opening the main bonnet. But anyway, I'm not that concerned why they were there, but I know they're there. Now I don't have anything, and I didn't want to buy anything. I didn't want to spend money, so I don't even remember, but when I did the convoy light, I used these little tin straps to double up thickness and make the little bracket, and that worked really well. So I've done exactly the same thing here. I've just made them into flat plates, and I've just taken the corners off and rounded them off, and they're going to sit at some point when I do, after I've done the rivets, they're going to sit more or less either side. I'll equal them out, but they're more or less going to sit like that. And then I'm going to have to work up a little detail for a hinge to go on this side here, and I might use a rivet to replicate the little handle that would have been used to lift them up. But I just think, again, when you've got this size or scale of vehicle, I think it's important to replicate details like that. So I'm going to set them to one side for now. Actually, no, what I'll do is, because I want to get these on at some point before I paint them, let's go and put a couple of little rivets in here, and then I'm going to work out how to do the hinges as well, and then we can come back and do the rivets. Right, so I found some carbon rod that I use normally for the aerials on my tanks. Sorry, just bring out the camera, and that's a perfect, I think, a perfect sort of scale diameter to replicate a hinge. So I've cut 4 equal size, about 8mm long, which I'm going to glue onto this, but not yet. I think I might just wait until I've got this on the dashboard itself, or this bulkhead here, and then glue them onto the actual main body. So first things first, let's just get, so I've got a couple of rivets here which are slightly bigger than the ones I've selected for gluing onto the main body. Pop that on there. And I'm just doing this by eye. So this is, again, it's in the center, but it's in the center on this way, but it's off center this way. I think that's about right. Let's do the same thing again. I don't want to. The problem is with these tend to flip off the tweezers, so I'm just going to use that as a bit of a guide. Mirror that. That's about right. Don't get too hung up on this, as long as it looks right by eye. And then the idea is that these little hinges, I'll glue them into position. It's attached to that quality. I'll glue them into position something like, move that around, something like that, and that will look, hopefully it'll look like a little hinge. And again, when it's all painted up, I think that'll look, it will add to it. So that's that. I'm glad we've done that. Simple, virtually zero cost, and I think we'll just add that another little level of detail. So I'm going to park those up out of the way for now. Now we're going to get set up to look at the rivets on this. So I've just set this out using, I've got these, again, I'm very lucky, I've got loads of bits and left over from other modelling jobs. These are little balsa wood planks that I used to use, again, for some of my dioramas. I've just used that one piece there, which is about 5mm, just to set this piece out. And I've marked on here a grid, and these are 15mm apart, and I've just put a pencil mark on there, and I've gone either side of the center, so the first rivet will go in just to the left or right of the center, and I'm just going to put another piece of masking tape on that just to stop that from moving. And that is it. I'm just using standard super glue for this. The moment of truth. Again, this is going to be really good practice for when I do this on the sides. So I just drop that into position. I might have to use another tool just to position that where I want it. Pretty much center line of the pencil mark, and I'm just pushing that up so it's tight against a bit of wood. That's gone on lovely. Hope you can see that. The tricky thing with these is they are very lightweight, but I think a really good alternative to, I know you can get some of these as a modelling accessory, but these tend to be very expensive. I'm pretty sure I said it before, I certainly said it on the members video, a whole box of these, and you get thousands, is less than £10. And when they're painted, as you saw on the little bracket for the convoy light, I think they look really good. This is just a job of patience, but I think well worth it. So I think we'll get the results that we want. And I couldn't think of another way of getting a perfect straight line of rivets. And even if the spacing is a little bit out, I mean, it won't be much out, it'll be up the thickness of a pencil, it's still going to look good. So I think when I come to do the rest of the body, I'll probably just show you a few of these and then do a lot of it off camera, because I think it's going to take a long time. And I think one of the things that it's quite easy to overlook on a build like this, to get it to look right, it can take hours and hours and hours. So you get the general concept. I'm not sure if you can see that on the camera, but they're starting to go into position just here. I'm going to carry on, and then when I've done all of these, I'll come back and then we'll put these little flaps on. So that's the rivets done. I'm really pleased that they look really smart, really straight. Now I've gone ahead and I've put one of these little flaps on. I'm going to do the other one now. I've just allowed the B7000 glue I'm using B7000 to position these, gives me a little bit of movement. Now again, I've done these centered, and I've got 6 rivets, and then I'm going into the center line between if you come from the center, 1, 2, 3, and then to go into the center line of that, and I'm positioning this so that the dummy like handle, if you like, is positioned towards the windscreen, because the idea is that these would have been hinged on this side here. That just needs to move over a bit more. That's why I like this B7000 glue, because it's very forgiving. So that's that. And I'm just going to position these where I think they would go. Something like that. Again, don't get too hung up. And you don't even have to do this. I just think that on a kit like this, which is so beautifully made by Armortek, it kind of lends itself very easily to thinking of ideas and get your creativity side flowing. And again, they don't look like hinges at the moment, they just look like it's a black carbon rod. But when this is all painted, I think it'll work really well. That's it. Now we can concentrate on positioning that. I think that's perfect. What do you think? Right, so I'm going to let that go off, and then once these are all gone off, we can then start talking about installing some of the other parts on here. Right, so the glue's gone off, and it's time to now carry on with the dashboard. I'm skipping through some of this stuff because I want to try and get a lot covered in today's video, and I do want to get on to talk about the mudguards as well, but I'm also very keen to get this done and get painted, so I'll shut up. Right, so all of these are now done, the flaps are all dry. Time to talk about the other parts that go on to this. So we have this instrument cluster. which goes in there, and I think Armortek just asked us to glue it in. It's a bit tight, but it gets glued in there. We have a grab rail that goes in there, and that just gets glued in, but I want to do some work on that. We have this box that goes underneath. We have a tachograph which slots in there, but I've mastered all up because this needs to be painted a different colour. This is going to be painted black. And you have this sort of gear levers here, which I think, I might be wrong, but I think they may operate the tracks. But you don't get any levers with this, so I've had to make up my own levers, and I'll talk you through that in a moment. So that's everything pretty much you get with the kit. So briefly, on the dash, you can see I've masked off the dials here. And this is because I don't want any paint where I'm going to be putting the decals. And if you remember those decals that I got resized from Pegenhorst. Now, I was also toying with the idea of how to get this to look glazed. And Peter did send me some coin display, circular clear coin display boxes. And the lids you can modify, and you can get a couple of them to work, but the smaller dials, impossible to work. So I was playing around and I come up with an idea, and I did a test. I'm going to show you this. So this is my really crude test. Again, the test for this is on the members area with a video of all of this, kind of a bit more work and background of what I did with the detailing. Let's see if I can get the light to catch that. So I've crudely bored out a shallow hole in this piece of raw aluminium. I installed one of the spare decals, which is oversized and doesn't work, but it was one of the ones they sent originally. And then I just backfilled it with clear resin, and although I overfilled it a bit, but anyway, it works perfectly. You get that lovely sort of glass shine. And what's really nice about this, unlike using the coin display lids, I can get a bezel around this when it's all finished and painted. So the idea is paint all of this. When this is all cured and finished, I'm going to put the decals in, and then I'm going to call in an expert who's an expert in resin, making lots of things with resin, and they'll be joining me in the next video, not this video, because this will not be ready in time. Also, I want to get on and talk about the mudguards. So we'll cover that off at that point, and I think once they're glazed, or once the resin filled and it looks really smart, the next thing is I need to think about a bezel. And I've got these oil washers, and all of these, so we'll put that one there, I think. I've got a whole box of them. And again, I don't want to be going out buying stuff, so I think this is going to be perfect. So I'm going to use these bezels, sorry, these oil washers. They're fairly thin gauge, they're only about 1 millimeter thick, and once they're painted black and everything's filled in there, I think they're going to look really, really smart. So that's the plan. So now let's get on and put some of these parts onto here. So the first thing is this box, which at the moment is just fixed in with a couple of 8mm M3 fixings. I'm not going to use any thread locker for this. Just put a couple of turns on that. Let me turn that around so you can. It's difficult to show you this on the camera, but I think you get the gist. There's 2 fixings into the underside of the main dash, and then there's another couple of fixings that get bolted through from the other side of the bulkhead. So on the back of this there's a couple of holes here and here, which I understand when you present this to the bulkhead, you can then fix through and pick those up as well. And because this is all going to start getting really heavy. So let's do, I'll tell you what, let's do this grab rail next. This grab rail goes in here, and they don't give you anything else other than that. But in my photos, which I'm going to see if I can show you here, it's got a little collar around it. And I'm going to do this for all of these handles. And I was looking around, and I've got some spare M2 washers, and they fit perfectly. So I'll just pull that out, pop that on there, glue that into position, pop that on there, and that will replicate the little collar. Again, I just think it just adds that little edge of detail. So let's do that now. So ahead of gluing, I've just push 2 washers on, and now I'm just going to get my glue. Just put a bit of glue inside the hole and a bit of glue on the outside of the hole. Now I can pop that on one side. Into the other side. Perfect. Push those washers down so they come in contact with the glue, and that looks so much better. I'm just going to turn that up this way now, because this is where the windscreen eventually be mounted, and I just want to make sure that the handle's not clashing in any way whatsoever, because there is a hole, difficult to show you on here, but there's a hole on the underside of this that you can actually see that the end of the handle is just touching that, and if we weren't careful we'd end up forgetting that's happened, and then we wouldn't be able to install the windscreen. So that's that. Right, let's talk about this little gear mechanism here. Right, so we've got this little gear mechanism here, and what I've done is I've just using the little rivets, the smaller ones. There's all sorts of sizes, but one of the smaller ones, I say one, there's actually 8 in total, just to replicate what would be the screw fixings to hold that in place. And I think that's going to look quite smart. Again, I covered that off on that members video. And that just glues into position like that. And that seems to fit in there perfectly. Probably too well. And that just needs to be glued. So we're going to get a bit of glue and just apply that fairly liberally to the back of that. I can then pop into position, press down. Right, now in the photographs I've got, you've got these little track levers, I believe they are. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but you can just about see them in this photograph here. And I wanted to make something up, because again, you don't get those in the kit. So what I've got here is a piece of square brass rod, and that is 2 millimeters wide, square. Got the length of that, and I've cut a couple of small sections, and these are 20 millimeters long, and all I've done is just use my bench grinder just to turn the square end into a circular end. And I've got these, which are, believe it or not, earring studs, and I think when you've applied that to that, that looks really smart, and that's when it's glued into position. I think that's going to look really smart. I'm not going to paint that. I'm going to keep that in its black finish. Now we just need to glue these into position, so when I paint it, we can get we can get everything painted. So I'm going to use the photograph that I've got as a bit of a indicator, and they're both pointing upwards. So again, I'm just going to use glue. Position that on its angle, making sure that it is square. I'm just going to press a bit of glue in the gap. case you're wondering why I'm using the mole grips, I just get a better grip on it, because that tube is quite hard to press. And that should, yeah, that'll be fine now. We get the next one. Look guys, you don't really need to do this, but I just think that this kit, as I said before, screams out for this kind of attention to detail. Pop that, get that aligned so it's square. While we're waiting for that to go off, we can now look at installing this. So I can get this glued in now. Hopefully it'll go in, because it is fairly tight. All I want to do is get that contact between this surface and the back of that. There's only one way this can go in. That is tight. That's in. Yeah, that's in. It's sitting exactly where it should be. Right, that's that. Almost ready to go and get this painted now. Pretty short. Now, I just want to talk you through a few details. So on here, there's a whole array of little switches and gauges and everything else. We talked about the decals. We'll do those with the resin, with the bezels. But in my members video, I do show you how I go about making up some of the other parts, like that little key switch there, which I think is really smart. And I've got various other dials that I've made up. Goes in there. Switches. Loads of bits and pieces here. And a little choke, which goes in that hole there. And there's a dial that goes down this end here. And I think once it's all painted up and the dials are in and all these switches are on, I think it's going to look incredible, especially when you get the little tachograph that goes on the end here and all looking smart. So I'm really excited about how this is going to turn out. So that's that. I was going to pop all those little bits away. And again, I'm sorry I haven't done that on my main channel, just that, as you can see, detailing on this sort of scale can take a huge amount of time. Right, so now I think we're ready to give this a bit of a clean and get it onto my spray bench. Actually, one more thing I completely forgot. It's the steering rack. This gets bolted to the underside of this as well, but I wanted to just briefly mention this. If you follow my videos and you watch the Series 1 Land Rover build in particular, you remember then that I had to set up my own method of synchronizing the steering wheel with the main steering servo, because that doesn't come as an option from Armortek. Same deal with this amazing kit. So I'm playing around at this stage. I haven't finalized it, but I'm playing around with doing something similar, putting a secondary servo in to allow the steering wheel to synchronize with the steering. That's the reason why I'm mentioning this, is that we must make sure that this hole is clean and free of any sort of grit or anything, because I want this rack to move freely. So I don't want any resistance when I do get the servo working. So that's the only reason I mentioned that. So I have cleaned up this shaft, and I've also cleaned up this hole. So I will plug that when I'm painting, because I don't want to get any paint inside that. Now there's a couple of fixings either side, but these are just dummy fixings, just to replicate what you'd expect to see on the actual vehicle. And these are just like little 4mm M2.5 nuts, or little hex fixings they call them, I think, not nuts. And they should just spin into the holes like that. Not doing anything other than doing that by hand, because once it's all painted, that will form a seal, and it just adds detail to it. And once they've done this, we can then fix this on to the dashboard and then start the whole painting process. I'm probably going to be filming this over a couple of days, but I'm going to try and condense it down into one video for you. So that's that. So we can turn that over, and that's presented like in that orientation. These are M4 16mm fasteners that you used for that. And that's that. So that steering will sort of sit up here, and then we screw the steering wheel to it. Quite smart, isn't it? And then this bit will be inside the engine bay, or where the battery bay is, and I'll just have to work out the best way to get a servo working. So that is it. We can now put this on the paint bench once and for all. Right, I'm going to be bringing the dashboard back onto my workbench in a moment, because I've just realised I forgot to drill the little holes for these brass fixings, but it's okay, it's only had a couple of coats of primer, so we can do that now. And now I've unpacked these, and I'm going to get these a coat of primer, because I want to get these, and particularly interested in getting these correctly sprayed, because these are on show. And once I've got these primed, and they're safe from oxidizing, then I can actually bolt them to the main floor plate. But ahead of that, I just wanted to talk to you about what I'm doing on this end. So this is the rear of the vehicle, this is the front of the vehicle, and those two little fixings are what do you remember the little step that I put that mod mesh on? That's what they fix into there. But on the back here, I've drilled 4 holes, and you can see that. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want to add some rubber mudguards at the end of this, and I'm going to be putting a stud through here to retain the rubber, because I don't think glue itself will hold it in place. So that's the rationale behind that. Done it on both sides, and I wanted to do that before I painted them. So it's just very simple, a 1.5mm hole, equally spread out, enough to avoid the tracks. I'm hoping I'm not going to have any issues with the tracks. I don't think so. I've done a test fit. So that's the reason for that. Now I can get these on my bench. They've been rubbed down, smoothed off, cleaned off, ready for priming. I'll do that, and then I'll be back with the dashboard. Okay, so before I go any further with the painting, I need to do these holes and get these little brass screws in. Now, I've set out using a pencil where I want to put these in the line. So I've just used a very small, you know, that balsa wood I used earlier, a 5mm balsa wood. That's set a line across here, and then I've just looked at the photographs I've got, and I'm just going to go and with a bit of freehand, once I get it on that line, just use my spring-loaded center punch to identify where I'm going to drill the little holes. And I've got a very small drill bit, very sharp, very small drill bit, which I'm going to use to do the holes. And I think I've got 3 more to do on here. Again, you don't have to do this. This is just me trying to add some detail. So now I can load my drill up and drill these holes. Right, so now I can load my drill bit up, 1.5mm drill. I'm just going to put that, allow that to go through under its own weight. I'm not putting any weight on that at all. Perfect. So I'm going to carry on doing this, and then when I've drilled all the holes, I'll come back to camera and we'll do the glue, gluing in the screws, sorry. Right, so that's all the holes drilled. Now we can just get some glue and glue these into the holes. I'm going to put them at a bit of an angle. When I say at the slot and the screw, I'm going to try and get them all the same direction. I'll carry on doing this. I think they're going to look really smart. Yeah, I'll carry on doing this, and next time you see this will be when it's painted. Okay, so while I'm waiting for the dashboard to dry in between coats, I thought I'd start on the main sort of floor part, because ahead of me moving forward on the electronics, I'd like to have this done so I can actually just even test fit it onto the main chassis itself. Quite a bit of work involved in this, and I will try and get all of this done in this video, but I'll probably sort of skip a lot of it and just talk you through some of the process. But the very first thing I need to do is to work on this plate here, this beautifully made, really heavy piece of aluminium, which is the back plate for the seating, I believe for the front seats. And a part of that is these have been CNC recess cut. There's a long line here and there's two X's here, and Armortek send us the 3mm rods to go into that, but there's a little bit of work to do to them to make them work properly or fit properly. I have primed and now sanded down the mudguards because just felt that it was right to do. They've been undercoated both sides, but just sanded down on the top to get it ready for its Dunkelgelb. I'll probably end up priming all of this as well, and then the idea is to get all this kind of assembled, and so I can loosely fit it onto the chassis as part of working out all the electronics, which is going to be coming very, very soon. So I'm going to reposition the camera and we'll get stuck in and start talking about this piece here. Okay, so there's a few things I want to install on this plate while it's not attached to the main body. I just think it'd be easier. There's a couple of hinges I want to put on here. But the first thing I'm going to do is start looking at this here. So in the kit, you get these rods that, I'll just orientate this around. So this is the top section here with this line, and they are simply glued into position, but they are oversized and also they're square cut on the end, and these are round. So I'm going to have to do a bit of work on my bench for that, on my bench grinder, sander. I have started with this one, so I've done this is all rounded off both ends. This will go in here, but ahead of me doing any gluing on that, I want to clean up that part in there just so that I can get a good bond with the glue. Might as well do all these as well at the same time. I know this has been a lengthy video, and I'm sorry, but these are parts I just feel that need to be done now. So that's that, and I'll just demonstrate here that these now fit perfectly into position. And with the cross members, I've had to grind them down with an angle, and I've put a little groove in the middle of that so it wraps nicely onto the circular rod. So that's that. That one's flipped over, and that's that. Now you get a decent fit there. Really smart. I like that. So time to glue. Let's just dry that out. Make sure there's no moisture in there. I'll cut and trim these away from camera, but I thought I'd just do this bit with you. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm using a brand new super glue. Put that, goes in like that. I'm just going to tap that in. That's it. Make sure I've got the right orientation of these, and that one is. Again, just tap that in. Perfect. Just make sure that still fits in there, and it does. Perfect. Now, what I'm going to do is off camera, I'm going to go and get the other ones trimmed up, round off the ends, same on these, cut these at an angle, and again then we'll install those. These are all now rounded off and they all fit, so we can get these in. Let's put that one in first. That's that. Perfect. Then we do this. And again, you really need, if you are building one of these, you need to just double check and test fit these before you start trying to put them in. And I'm only using a little rubber mallet just to make sure it's bedded in there correctly. And again, I've cut these at an angle. I can't really see on here, but and I'll put just a little groove in the middle of that, just so it sits perfectly up against this member here. Perfect. And the last one. Done. Whip this over in a minute once that glue goes off, and we'll put the hinges on the back. Okay, might as well start by doing these hinges. There's 4 that goes on this panel here, 2 on this, and 2 on this panel here. This is going into aluminium, so I don't think I need to worry about thread locker on that one. Just going to put that in loosely for now, and then get the other one in. We can tighten them both up. I think there's only one way these can go on to make them function correctly. As before, these are very vulnerable little brass hinges, so you have to be very careful with them. I'll do these, I'll do a couple on there, and then I'll do the rest off camera, just so that we can jump on to getting the floor plate assembled. Won't be getting any more work done on the dashboard today in this session, or I won't be priming this floor or any of this in today's video, but I will be priming it off camera in time for the next build session. So that's that. Looks a bit odd, looks a bit off-centered. Not sure what that's all about, but anyway. Oh, of course, you've got there's a box that goes in here. Yeah, there's a box, an equipment box that goes in here, so that's why that is off-centered like that, so that makes sense. Right, so let's just get the first hinge on here. I will be using thread locker for this. Pop that through. Now these are slotted. I don't know if you can see that. There's slots, so it's obviously designed to have some movement on them. And that'll probably just to help us when we come to put the seat covers on. Now, I guess it would seem that we've moved forward and we're almost at the final stages of this, but let me assure you we're not. The reason why I'm doing all of this is just to reiterate, is I want to get the floor, this part of the floor assembled. I'm just going to slacken that off a bit. I'll put that upside down, haven't I? Before it slipped there, classic. Yeah, I just want to get the this part of the floor assembled so that when I come to do the electronics with Adrian, I've got everything sort of so we can test fit and ultimately finish off the placement of all the electronics, knowing where the floor plate goes and what have you. So that's the rationale behind that. Again, I'm making this look awkward, guys. Apologies. It isn't. Far from it. Slacking it off just a little. So that's the hinge on. Like that. Just checking the instructions, and that is the right orientation. So I'll crack on, I'll do the rest of the hinges, and then I'll come back to camera. Okay, so I'm going to do the floor plate next. This floor plate here is orientated so that this slot here is at the front of the vehicle. This is the way I've orientated the mudguards. And this is then bolted through from the underside. So these crosses here point towards the rear of the vehicle. The right orientation for this is also to make sure that the countersunk holes are presented towards you rather than facing down. So I know that that's got to be like that. So I'm just going to use that and then flip this over. And then line up the 3 of the holes. This is fixed with 3 8mm M4 fixings to the plate, and then there's another M4 8mm cap fixing that gets bolted from or through the mudguard. I'm not using thread locker on these, just to balance this as much as I can. That's that. Nice and tight. Flip that back round, and there we have the orientation of it. And you can see you can still get access to these screws to screw the thing down, the plate down onto the stanchions. But I really need to think about how to make this really easy for Peter to remove if he ever needs to get the electronics. So I'm going to park that thought process up for a while and just concentrate on getting some more of the parts onto here. Right, the next thing I'm going to do is to put, there's some connecting plates that need to go onto the mudguard. So we'll move this out of the way. And we'll do these. Now these are fixed with a butt fixing, 8mm M3 butt fixing, and that goes through the top of the mudguard, through the plate, and then secured with a nut the other side. Again, I'm not sure of any of this. 8mm seems a bit overkill. Just want to make sure that this doesn't clash with the tracks when we get round to doing that. So I might use my Dremel just to remove the excess. Tighten these up. Wipe off that excess thread locker. The other side. Don't know if you can see that, can you? It's just so long, this. Last fixing. I am using thread locker on this. Just don't want those nuts coming undone. That's that. And just wipe off any excess. Now, just going to move these apart. Bring back the plate. And that sits on there like that. And then we have these cross members that go across here that obviously will help support this as well. So just double checking if those holes align, and they do. So now we can get these cross members in across here. I'll probably put them onto this first and then fix them onto this. So I'll just go and fetch those, and we'll crack on with that. Okay, so now I'm going to put these two other cross members or seat supports in, and this is roughly where they go. So this one goes on the back like that. This is the one with the 4 hinges, and this one goes in the mid span here. So I'm going to pop these just down there for now. Turn this on its side. I'm going to use this bit of tissue, roll of tissue, to help support that. Got a fixing, so this is a 6mm M3 cap fixing that goes through that, and then goes through the whole. Hang on, put it in the right position in the plate. I've got a nut here which I'm just going to spin on. Definitely using thread locker for this. There we go, it's on now. And then just tighten that up. Move that. And just line up the hole. So I think that's why you really need to put these little hinges on, because otherwise it will be awkward to do. Now I can take this away because that should stand on its own. We'll take the rear one, and that will go more or less in that position there. Just trying to find a hole. There we go. Just need another nut. It's tight. Nice. Right, that's that. And these other holes, as well as this one here, will be fixed through the the mudguard. So I'm going to fetch the mudguard back and we'll position this where it's supposed to go. Okay, let's have a look. Pretty much there or thereabouts. That's how it goes, that's how it sits. Now this is as far as I'm going to go today because I want to get this primed, and then this will at least help me understand how the electronics will be laid out a little bit better. So I'll just finish fixing these off, excuse me. Right, so we've got some cap fixings for the mudguards, so they go through the top, and we'll just try and locate a nut to the underside of that through the mudguard. That was easier than I thought. Do this one as well, this end. And I'll come back when I'm ready to turn it over to put the other fixings in for the main aluminium block there. Okay, that's all those fixings installed. Now, just going to turn this upside down, grab the fixings I'm going to need just to put the last of the fasteners through the mudguard here. Just make sure I've got the right tool. All different variables. That just screws in from this side. That's that. That's that. Spin that back round. You can see why I had to move the Halftrack off my workbench. Right, so that's that. I think we've reached a natural break now, so we can call it a day. So I'm just going to go and get the dashboard off my paint bench to have a look at that, and then I'll be back to camera to talk about the next steps. So that's it. That's as far as I can go today, and I think I've got to a natural break in the progress of the model. And now the next step for me is to do the electronics with Adrian, and I really wanted to get this floor plate built so I understood where the electronics will end up sitting in the chassis. And of course we went and did a lot of detail on the dashboard, and I'm really sorry that it was a longer video than normal, but I really thought it was a good idea to just get as much done in this so that in the next video we can then really sort of focus on finishing off the dashboard and making it really pop with all the other details on it. I'm really looking forward to seeing that, and we may end up installing it onto the bulkhead, not sure yet. But the next step really for me, next time you see this model will be operational, and I might give you a quick run through the operational aspects of it, and then once we've got all that done we can then carry on with the bodywork and then see how we get on. But in the meantime I'm going to get this primed and ready to go to test fit. So I'm going to sign off now by saying thanks again to all my subscribers. Amazing support that you guys give me, I really do appreciate that, and a massive thank you to my members, and again you all know who you are, and that extra level of support is incredible. And finally a thank you to Peter for allowing me to build your model, Peter, and I really am enjoying this, and I really hope you continue to approve of my build methods. So I'm going to sign off now by saying I am Tony. I absolutely love building this kit, and I can't wait to see you in the next session. See you soon.